Yes. How are we doing? Hope you had a really great weekend. Happy Monday. Hope you're ready and fired for the week. This is show 372. And today we're going to talk about, is it just stigma or male stigma that stops us talking about things that are going on in our lives or allowing us to be vulnerable? And I just want to talk a little bit about that and maybe look into some other areas about maybe why we don't express ourselves as well as maybe we should as blokes. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Rise to Thrive show. I am your host, James Boardman. And if you are coming through, then please do let me know in the comments by letting me know why you struggle to open up. Okay, make sure you hit the love heart button right here. Tell me why you struggle to open up in one sentence. Okay, be interested to see those people that are willing to open up and actually share that info, right? Oh, what a weekend. Fully submerged myself into the family this weekend. Watched the Arsenal score the last minute winner against Man United. That felt good. That felt pretty good. Sorry, United fans. Probably unfollow. Before we get into this, to make you aware that if you don't already work with us, our Elite 90 program starts in February. And what we're doing this week is you are able to register your interest in coming to work with us over 90 days, right? To lead you better, to have better connections with your family, your wife, to be able to manage your time, your energy and focus better around work and life, to have a much more consistent health run and building momentum, right? Cool. All right, so listen, let's get into this. So I listened to this podcast the other day and they were talking about men's mental health, and they got onto the subject of this particular guy not opening up. Okay, there was this particular guy and he wasn't opening up, and the presenter was just like, well, there is this stigma in men where they just don't open up. There is this thing where when we're around other guys, we can't convey our emotions the way that we feel or that honesty. And I do get to a certain degree and context that being around other guys is very difficult. There is this macho ego sense of emotion, of restriction, and we don't want to come across as weak or needy or fragile or vulnerable. And I think over the last 10 years that has dramatically changed in the way that we look at mental health. So I feel like that has eased slightly, and I feel that maybe my son's generation, who's 15, when they get to my age, okay, maybe may find it easier. And one of the reasons that they may find it easier is that I feel for guys right now, one of the things I feel that we should be doing actually is what I feel is one of the root causes of why we don't open up today, is about understanding how to open up. Now, for me, this should start at school level. Like, I almost feel that this may even start in late junior school to secondary school and college. And I think there should be an education about this of almost a 10-year span in education about understanding our own emotions and understanding how to communicate that, how to express that, so that actually it becomes normal. It's actually taught at educational level, so that we are taught to communicate with each other. We are taught that actually, sorry, 2 seconds, so that we're actually taught how to express ourselves. And then everyone is kind of almost can open up that little bit more, right? Like, I know for a fact that I will always talk to my older kids and my 5-year-old about how some days we just don't really feel great. Talking about it really helps. I talk with my son who's 15. We talk about his overthinking, his low moods. We talk about when he feels happy. Like, And what I'm trying to do is conditioning him to be able to talk to me about how he feels. So what we do is we have at least one day a week where he will talk openly about how he feels. Okay. And I think if we can encourage, as fathers right now, our children to face reality, or that they can understand, like what Alex is saying there, they're not burdening the other one. If it becomes a culture, if it becomes part of our society, as all of these kids are growing up, that are our kids now, it almost becomes normal that you can go down a pub and just go, I'm just having a really bad day, I'm just really struggling with the work pressures, I'm just really struggling with the stress. But for our generation right now, it's very difficult to do that because mental health wasn't really a part of our lives back then. Although it was there, we didn't really understand it, we didn't really talk about it, not even at media or press level, right? And I think like anything, when I think about everything in our lives, not necessarily my lives, but when I think about the lives of my children and where they are at different stages, they are taught at that very early age, like everything about manners, about being polite, about how to ask for things, about how to communicate, about how to read, about how to do maths. But why I don't understand is why we're not talking about how do we handle our emotions. How do we communicate that across? How do we know when we're not feeling great? What are those signs and symptoms? What does this mean? You know, for a lot of people, I was listening to this podcast, it was talking about depression and people who were depressed not knowing that they were. Steady. And they didn't know what depression was. When they were depressed, they didn't know that it was depression. And I always kind of feel like that we should be talking about this like in classes weekly in school to understand what's going on in their own mind and actually saying like, I need to get this out of me, I need to be able to talk about this. So yes, I think there is this element of like I don't want to burden people, or there is this male stigma, but I think there's also an educational sense, which is where we come in, which is where we lead you to lead them. Leading you to lead them is doing our part at homes to talk about mental health, to talk about being open, to being a point of contact where people can open up. You know, my big two regularly do it. They regularly do it. They know exactly what I've gone through. They know exactly when I sat at the edge of my bed and I was contemplating suicide. They know exactly when I'm really having a bad time at, like in 2021 when I was having a really bad year. And if I'm like struggling, we always are you okay? Are you good? Just checking in, just making sure you're right. And it becomes culture, it becomes habit. And I think if we can teach that, I don't think we're going to fully open up the world, but I certainly think that we can make it a lot easier to be able to go down a pub with your mates. And even though you go down with 6 of your mates, four of them are bound to be struggling and no one talks about it. Someone opens up and goes, just having a really bad day, I'm just really feeling the pressure of work, I'm really feeling the pressure of my relationship, I'm really not understanding what's going on in my head. Boom, and then we can kind of trigger a conversation. But I think if we are going to make a difference and we're going to make a legacy and we're going to create something for the future, it's really about helping our kids understand that. But first of all, we have to manage ourselves, right? And I don't believe that men are looking after themselves fully enough to be able to do that. You've got to be able to lead yourself, but many guys don't know how to lead themselves. You know, education stops at 18 if you're at college, or it stops at 22, and then you go into the real world, and then you fight through, right? You fight through. You don't necessarily learn how to manage your emotions. You don't necessarily learn how to manage your time, your energy, and your focus. So what ends up becomes this tidal wave of trying to survive life. Morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good, you?
Good, yes, fine.
Good. We end up surviving life. And because we're surviving life, we're not leading ourselves. What we're not doing is leading those people around us, maybe the way that we'd want to, in terms of legacy status, in terms of education, in terms of, you know, like I'm going through this, okay? And I just think I just don't want it all to put it down to this stigma. I think there's a lot of people, I've met a lot of men who didn't get the love that they needed, that didn't get the attention that they needed, that weren't educated as kids, and they grew up confused, and they grew up unloved, and that made them feel like really inclined not to open up. You know, I'm not saying we're going to save everybody, I'm not saying we're going to change the whole world, but we can make the world 1% better, I think, by educating our kids, by helping our kids move forwards. And that starts with us. That starts with us squaring ourselves away, right? Making sure that we understand ourselves, making sure that we are leading from the front by being open with your wife. Like, many guys I meet are not even honest with their wives about what they're going through. But I really feel that we do have that responsibility to really make a difference in terms of moving this mental health thing forward. And I just thought this would be just more of a statement more than an educational type of show about my own thoughts on this, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are on it in the comments. And I'd love to, fucking light, 2 secs, and I'd love to be able to hear if there's anything that you're doing right now, or there's something that you're trying to work on with your kids, and how we make that difference to lead them, right? That makes sense? Anyway, something a little bit different. I hope you have an amazing day. Catch up with you on Wednesday. Let's get to work.